Hey everybody, happy Friday. This is Love and Relo, the voice of the relocation industry. I am your host, Ben Cross, and I am joined by the amazing Christian Höferle, of the CEO and founder of The Culture Mastery. Christian, how did I do with that last name? I've been practicing.
You nailed it, man. Thank you for having me. And that doesn't happen often that people whose first language is English know how to pronounce my last name. It's been not a struggle, but it's been a challenge ever since I moved to the US from Germany, that my last name contains a letter that is indicative of a sound that the English language doesn't create. So it's not easy for non-German speakers to pronounce it properly. And you did. Thank you.
Nice. Awesome. Well, I'm excited, and I think that's a great start. I do have a question though. So you talk about, being from Germany and being in the US. First question is, where in the US are you?
I am in Atlanta, Georgia, I would say, well, as my friends and neighbors would say, the Black Mecca of the United States.
Oh, nice. Awesome. Awesome. That's would you go ahead? Let's go into that. Can you explain that?
Well, I think I've traveled the US quite a bit, and I think I haven't been to all the big metros, but I've seen the ones that matter, and I'm not going to name them because those that I don't say then will be mad. But I think there is no other city in the United States where you can be Black and successful in an unapologetic way. You don't have to justify your African American success in Atlanta because it comes with the territory.
I love that.
And that's what makes this city unique, because they're Black and they're proud, and you can sense it every day.
I love that, and I might say the only other city that has that dynamic might be Washington, D.C. as well.
All right.
Okay, has a very vibrant and affluent Black community, which is really cool to see.
I'll give you that.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I love having open conversations about race. A lot of people don't go there and don't touch it because it's such a charged issue. But I do think if we're ever going to get through ignorance and progress, we have to be open, and we have to really just have conversations that are just ordinary conversations, like we do about any other topic. If we're gonna talk through it and unpack it. I was actually a major of mine in college I was a double major, but one of my majors was Africana Studies.
Really?
So
look at that.
Yeah, it's a fascinating topic for me as well. Let's go here to LinkedIn here and check in with folks. I see some people filtering in. I see some people on Facebook. If you're on Facebook right now, go ahead, hit that like. Go ahead, drop me a comment. If you're on LinkedIn, go ahead and drop us a comment as well. I want to know where you're watching. I want to shout out your company. It's Friday at 3:00 Eastern, noon Pacific time. Let me know what you're up to this Friday and what you're looking forward to this weekend, how you're staying sane and in a good mindset and headspace here, as we are kind of at the peak of the COVID pandemic, but I think we're seeing potentially a light at the end of the tunnel. And I'm excited here. We're actually getting some people chiming in here. Jamie Massler, hi, Ben and Christian. Cheers from windy and sunny Mississippi. Jamie always gives us the update in Mississippi. I love it. Jamie says Memphis too. Jamie grew up in Memphis. Memphis does have a great Black community there as well. Able Recovery mentions Philadelphia and New Orleans. Although I think some of those communities lack the affluence maybe of an Atlanta and a Washington, D.C., but great suggestions as well. So now, Christian, going back to you. Here you are, conspicuously German. Love it. You're here in Atlanta. How in the heck does a German expat land in Atlanta? What was that journey like? Because I think that's the beginning of your mobility journey, I'm guessing.
You're right about that. And even though I didn't know it was a mobility journey back then, and back then I wasn't an expatriate. So my journey to this country happened in episodes, and the first one was in 1988. And those of you who might remember their history class, 88, that's the year before the Berlin Wall came down. So you heard that I'm German and that I came to the US in 88. That should tell you that I was from that part of Germany that was allowed to go. So I'm from what used to be West Germany. I'm from a small town south of Munich. So I'm a Southern boy in both countries, as it turns out.
I want to ask, because you mentioned Southern boy in both countries. Is there a difference between the North and the South in Germany, even in Western Germany, just like there is here in the United States?
Yes.
How so? Just out of curiosity.
Well, actually, this is usually part of our expatriate cultural training programs. That the southern part of Germany and the southern part of the U.S. they share a historic parallel. So in 1865, when the Civil War ended, the southern states were forced to remain in the Union, and ever since there was this rivalry, hatred, or just, I don't know, bickering between Yankees and Rednecks. And in 1866, the Prussian Empire, which was the dominant German, one of the two dominant German states in that period of history, reunited German sovereign territories, which meant that my home state of Bavaria became part of the German Empire under the Kaiser regime, right, under the German Empire regime. And up till then, Bavaria was an independent sovereign nation. It had its own king. So you may not know this, but most Americans know the buildings that king built. So if you know the Magic Castle at Disney World, it was modeled after Neuschwanstein Castle, built by the Bavarian king. So if you ever get a chance to go to Bavaria, go visit Neuschwanstein, because that's the original. Disney World, that's the copy. So
I love it.
So there is this north-south rivalry in Germany just as well. We just don't call our Northerners Yankee, and they don't call us Rednecks. We have different derogatory terms for each other, and they make fun of us. We make fun of them.
You know what's funny about this, right? So as you're talking about this, right, I'm getting comments from my LinkedIn folks. I'm getting comments from my Facebook folks, and I get two people who took exception to rednecks. Okay, one being my dad, right? So you know, and I've actually seen him in the summer. This guy has an affinity for lawn care and does indeed have a redneck in Tulsa, Oklahoma. And he says rednecks. And then I got my buddy Tim Quirk over here, who says you can't say redneck during a pandemic, which I think is said in jest.
Who is that? Who said that?
My buddy Tim Quirk here out of Western New York. He says, hello, Ben and Christian from Western New York. You can't say redneck during a pandemic. But what's interesting here is neither one or nobody has taken exception to the word Yankee, which is also a derogatory term towards Northerners. And I think actually Jamie Masslers told me a story where he was called a damn Yankee when he moved down to from New York to Memphis.
Well, there are two types of Yankees. You got to be careful. A Yankee is a Northerner who comes to visit. A damn Yankee is one that stays. Right? So
that's great. I love hearing an expat describe the culture here in the U.S. I'm going to go and shout out some more people. If you're watching on LinkedIn, please hit that like button, hit that celebration button. It lets people know that you're watching. It lets them know this is worth a damn. So hit that button. Also hit it on Facebook as well. Josh Rose, hey guys, happy Friday. Still trucking away at JK in Sterling, Virginia. That's Greater Washington, D.C. Thank you, Josh. And also appreciate that introduction to Adam McWhirter, who was on our show this Tuesday, I want to say, in China. Tim Quirk, we said that. Hello, Ben and Chris from Western New York. Simon Johns, hi from the UK. Simon, do you have any north-south biases, prejudices over there in the UK? I'd love to hear about those. I have a feeling you might.
Oh, yeah. Just talk to a Mancunian about London.
There you go. See, this is fun. I'm already having a really good time with this. Jamie Massler does confirm I'm a damn Yankee, born in New York and moved to the South. Awesome. I see the likes coming in. There's a flurry of likes and hearts, and we love that. I appreciate that. Janet here says hello from Sorrento, Florida, as opposed to Sorrento, Italy. Although you should see her backyard, it would feel like you're in Italy. So now here you are. So here you are in the States. Let's get back to your story, okay? What brings you to Atlanta?
Well, Atlanta was a choice that we as a family made because we've been living here in Atlanta for the past 3 years. And before that, we lived in the southeastern part of Tennessee, in the greater Chattanooga, Tennessee area for a total of 13 years. But that was not my original journey to the US. So my original journey was as a high school student in northwestern Minnesota. Yeah, you betcha. So for those of you who watched the movie Fargo, that's exactly what it was like. So I was a foreign exchange student about 30, 40 minutes east of Fargo, and bloody cold winters, damningly hot summer, and I fell in love with the country, fell in love with the people. And if whatever image you have in mind of rural Minnesota, it might be true, but that doesn't mean that it's boring. It was fascinating to me, and this was
Right.
I was 17 years old, and I was blessed that I had what I would say my blinders taken off. Up till then, I thought, okay, life has to be one way, the quote unquote normal way, which is obviously my way because my way is the right way. And then
Right.
I was exposed to a different set of normal. Like, this is different. I'm not sure if I like this, and let's see. But I was there for a year, so over the course of a year, I learned, well, they might not do it the way I do. They might not do it normally, but they still get results. So there's got to be something to that. So maybe there's more than one valid normal there. Okay, good. So I was 17 when that happened to me. And I went back to Germany, finished high school, did my back then mandatory military service, went to university, had a career in the entertainment industry. And then in 2004, my wife and I decided to move to the US because like myself, my wife also had an experience of living in the United States as a young person. She was actually conceived in Fresno, California, so my in-laws told me. And she was...
that sounds like a fun story. We don't need to get off on that tangent.
Yeah, that's all they told me. So I'm not sure how they did that, but there's apparently a process to that. And then she went to middle school in Maryland, in the Chesapeake Bay area. And so in 2004, we both knew that, hey, we love the States, we love the lifestyle, we love the culture, we love the mindset, which I think the easy comparison for me was Germany is glass half empty, the US is glass half full. In come the marketing department with ice cubes. So this is why we were drawn to the United States, and we said, hey, let's do this expat thing. Let's live abroad for a couple of years.
Yeah.
We can do that.
Yeah.
And it's been 16 years. So out of a couple of years became this.
Now, so this is interesting. As I listen to you tell this story, it reminds me of my own story, right? And I think that's how we all connect to everybody, right? It's like, how does this relate to me? But I think that your experience in Minnesota as a teenager, would you agree that made you much more likely to try it again as an adult?
Oh, yeah,
right?
Definitely.
You already tried it. You know what it's about. It's doable. It's attainable. And I think that that's such an interesting dynamic, because I think that there's an idea that we don't want to move our kids when they're in school and they have entrenched friend groups, especially at 17, especially in high school, right? But yours obviously informed your life choices, your decision probably to go on to become the culture guy, we'll talk more about your podcast and what you're doing with the culture mastery. And I just think that it might be something that it might be an experience that we want to expose our children to.
Yes,
relocation might be a benefit for kids as well.
I'm a big fan of that. And when my daughter asked me when she was 15, when she said, hey, Dad, I want to go to Munich and go to high school for half a year and live with Auntie and her godmother and my parents. And at first I was a bit apprehensive because she's my firstborn and she was only 10 or 15 and she's a really petite girl, black belt in Taekwondo nevertheless. And there was this split second of me thinking, I don't think you're ready. And then that split second passes at go, girl, because I did. Oh, sure, I was 2 years older than you are now, but go, do this, because I would not forgive myself if I said no. I want you to have this.
And these are the stories as an industry. I think that we have an obligation to tell, as each of us serve as advocates for the relocation industry, and we wonder about the decline in international assignments and even domestic relocations. But I think these are the stories that enrich our lives that we need to share with other people so they can understand how to enrich their own and their children's lives. So I think this is a fantastic story. And I do have a specific question here coming from the audience. And guys, if you're watching this, there's 15 people on LinkedIn right now. There's 5 people on Facebook and YouTube. I want to know what you're thinking, what your questions are. Please make sure you share those. I will make sure we get them asked. Each of you have valid questions, and this is such a better program when you all participate. Janet Turner says, I would like to hear about the entertainment industry work. Give us just a peek into that. What does that mean, you were in the entertainment industry?
That means that I liked Missy Elliott's embrace more than I like Jay-Z's handshake.
Bro, you can't even, time out. You can't even drop, that's such a loaded comment right there. First of all, Missy's amazing, but Jay-Z is an idol of mine. So I have to understand, okay, time out. You just derailed the entire podcast right
I'm
there.
sorry.
Christian, we may have to do a redux here, but if we have to first address the elephant in the room, which is Hove, throw up the rock. Tell me about Jay-Z and this opportunity. And well, first tell me about Missy and then tell me about Jay-Z. Please.
Well, Missy had me wait for almost 90 minutes in a Hamburg hotel lobby until she was ready for the interview. And I was boiling mad, but I didn't let on. And the minute she showed up and gave us a hug, it was all done. And she was the most charming person you would ever imagine. And she rocked the interview.
And what were you doing? You were interviewing her? Like, did you write about music or
we wrote about, I was working for the German version of the Billboard magazine. So we wrote about the business of music, not necessarily about music, but that was part of it. But the business of music was at the forefront. And this was just, well, Missy was put on the calendar and said, I can't pass up on that opportunity. And then I worked for MTV, you know, that there was a TV, for those of you who are younger, there was once a TV station that aired music videos all day. That's all they did. Hence the name, music television. So I worked for them a little bit. And when Jay-Z was in town to give his show in Munich, we interviewed him in a hotel room. And it was in 1999. So this was pre-Beyonce. This was when his career trajectory just started going.
This is Hard Knock Life.
Yep.
This is, okay.
So and Sean and I are about the same age. I mean, he's a couple of years. Well, I think
a couple of years older. No. You're about the same age. You might be a couple years older than him, actually.
Yeah, I was born in 1970. I think he's a 69, isn't he? But I think he and I were about the same age. Right? But his handshake was like a dead fish, like this.
He gave you a fish handshake. Time out. Was that because he wanted to give you a dap? But you went in for the handshake, and then he kind of gave you a half of like a.
Yeah, and I was white boy, not knowing what.
Responsibility for this handshake at all, or no?
I take responsibility too, and I have forgiven him since. But he doesn't call anymore, so it's all right.
So you had this falling out, and that's a shame.
No, it's like, what is this? I thought, what's with the dead fish? I'm not black enough for you. Obviously, I'm not. But why this? But anyway.
Oh my gosh, that's hilarious. This is so great. So he gave you this dead fish handshake, start off on the wrong foot. Was he at least on time?
Oh yeah, he was awesome.
Okay. And then he did this interview. Did you have a glimpse at that point? Because his musical career was only 3 years old at that point, from Reasonable Doubt in 96, Volume 1 in 98. Volume 1 in 98. Actually, I think Hard Knock Life might not have come out till 2000 or something. And then The Blueprint came out in 2001. But did you have any inkling that he was going to be this mega star that he is today? Did you see that or no?
Well, inkling. I mean, he was big then. He was not the megastar, but he was already big then, and he had this whole aura of, I've got it made, and I will make more of it about him. It was clear that he was not a flash in the pan. That was clear.
Yeah, because I mean, at that point, he already had his own label. He already had his own kind of entourage, all his own acts. You know, he's already putting them on. He's already building out. Probably Rock-Aware clothing was about that time as well.
Wow, and he had Dre. I mean, you've got to keep in mind there was always Andre in the back. Dr. Dre was there, right? So and he had the big major record label deal behind him. Are we getting off track here?
Yeah, we are. I'm sorry. I just have to go where the interest is. Okay. So anyway, flash forward. So that answers Janet's question about the music industry. Yes, Tim says did he really? Yes, of course he did. I'm very satisfied with the answer, to be honest with you.
Awesome.
I need more questions though coming in. But so now here you are, you get to Atlanta, and then how do you make the jump from music writer in Germany to the culture guy in Atlanta?
Great question. When we moved to the US, I was still writing for several of these industry trade outlets. And then in 2008, we had already lived in Tennessee for 4 years by then, a little car manufacturer from Germany decided to put a manufacturing plant into the Chattanooga area. It's just happens to be Germany's biggest employer, a company called Volkswagen. And I immediately recognized, oh, wait a second, they're going to bring in people, they're going to bring in expats, and their idea of America will be not the Tennessee Valley. What they know about the US is New York, LA, Florida, beaches, Grand Canyon, maybe a bit Chicago, but not the Tennessee Valley. They're going to be in for a rough awakening because the South is not like the rest of the country. And neither is any pocket of the US like the rest of the country. The US is not one culture. It is a very diverse society, not only in terms of societal and ethnic diversity. There's also diverse pockets in the country where behaviors are different. And in the Southeast is different than New York or Michigan or the Pacific Northwest, right? So I intuitively knew that, going by my own professional and personal experience, that expatriates being brought over for that assignment, they would be in for a very specific journey. And I positioned myself and said, okay, we're going to offer services around the relocation industry. Originally, we did destination services, like, basically, it's a derogatory term, but hand-holding, right? Taking an expat, taking them by the hand. Here's the Social Security office. Here's the driving license. Here's your schools. Here's your housing options. This is where you shop. Sure. This, like the whole DDS work. And that morphed into more and more cultural training work. And that's how I basically fell into that industry. There was never my plan. There was never an intention around this. I have no mobility certifications. I was like, okay, this is happening in my backyard. So being the Americanized German that I am, I seized the opportunity. I said, this is a monetizable skill set that I have. There's a need in the market. I'll solve a problem. Let's go solve problems.
Right. And I'm so fortunate because I get to interview all these entrepreneurs in the mobility space, and so many of them had the same experience you had, where they were uniquely qualified to solve a problem that many of them only them saw, and so here you are, a German expat living in that area, seeing other German expats come in. I'm sure it's a very natural, organic thing for you to say, okay, not only will I take you to the Social Security office and get a driver's license, but I can also help you understand how to fit in and flourish in these communities. And then so you begin your cultural training. And I got to tell you, I got to ask you, what do you think, what did you learn early on, or what have you learned in this process? What are the biggest gaps that we see? What are the biggest gaps for corporations or for incoming expats when they come over that you think need to be addressed? Help me understand.
Well, it depends on what the corporate culture is and how developed the organization is in terms of bringing in US-bound, inbound expatriates from around the world. But there seems to be a consensus amongst corporate America that the US has been driving the global economy, or has been the benchmark or kind of the blueprint for how business is done. American English is the dominant language in global business. And sorry for all the UK folks on here or any other English-speaking country, even though you don't like it, but it's the simple reality that the US has been at the forefront of this ever since, I'd say, World War II. So in the US, there seems to be somewhat of an assumption that the world knows enough about the US, so when they come here, they are already familiar with how business is done in the United States, and that's very rarely true, that outsiders understand the US way of doing business. And it's a double-edged sword. It's a double mistake, because many expatriates coming in think they understand the US because, hey, we watch their movies, we watch their TV shows, we read their literature, we are familiar with the pop culture.
Right. A lot of exposures to US culture. Yeah, and they think that that's the way it is. Yeah, interesting.
And it's what I call a similarity illusion. So people assume, and the English language lends itself to cut the assume up into, if you assume, you make an ass out of you and me. And I'm a huge fan, by the way, of a book called The Four Agreements by Don Miguel Ruiz. So if you haven't read that, Four Agreements, and one of the four agreements is do not assume. So making these assumptions is obviously a field full of landmines. You never know when you're going to step on one and blow things up. And usually, traditionally, my industry, my field, cultural training, coaching gets called in when somebody gets hurt, right? It's usually after the fact. More and more, though, I'm developing a client base, or have been developing a client base that is addressing this more proactively. So we are getting called in to actually lay a foundation for multinational, multicultural teams, aligning different approaches to problem solving, organizing work, giving feedback, communicating, and the more proactively an organization addresses this, the less fallout they'll have along the way.
So, yeah, I mean, this raises so many questions. But let me ask you this one. How one of the premises of this conversation is describing the lost investment in global talent.
Right.
Tell me what that means. I've seen you talk about that. Tell me what that exactly means.
Well, I don't have absolute numbers. I compiled numbers over the years from different service providers, mainly RMCs or service providers like you know the tax companies and consultancies like the KPMGs and Price Waterhouses and whatnot of the world. And the consensus seems to be that for a 3-year foreign assignment, you have to factor in somewhere between $1 million and $3 million of added expenses for that talent. And that includes not only the logistics, like the household goods move, or the legal work, or cost of living adjustment, and school tuition, and all sorts of expenses that come along with that. So that is a huge investment, a leap of faith by an organization into foreign assignees, into expatriate workforce. So what happens if that assignment doesn't work out? What happens if an employee and maybe their family or a spouse that you sent abroad is not performing well in that position? Your expectation is they'll do just as fine as they did at home, because that's why you're sending them away anyway. You want them to deliver for your organization, and you trust that person to do that job, and then they don't perform. And there's a variety of reasons. Either the language is a challenge, or they don't function in that culture because they have a really hard time getting used to the way things are done there. Maybe it's not them who have a challenge with that. Maybe it's their spouse or the kids, or maybe there is just a leadership gap that they're unable to adjust their leadership style to the new environment. Many of these factors can lead to premature end of such an assignment, but you've incurred the cost. You can write that off. So what we do, destination service providers, language training providers, cultural training, coaching providers, we cost a fraction of that overall pie, but we're your life insurance for that investment.
Yeah, you're going to make sure that actually pays off, and that you actually get to the ROI for it. I mean, I think you make a good point, and I want to ask you, because I have a question here. Are corporations spending too much time and money focusing on logistics and legal, like immigration? And maybe, I mean, are they focusing on that too much and ignoring maybe some of the other? I
don't think they're spending too much on these services. I think they're spending just enough as they need for these services. The question for me is, are they also spending enough to ensure assignment success? And not all organizations that I've dealt with in the past are doing that. They often consider the quote unquote soft skills as negligible. And I really, really, really take offense to the term soft skill, because soft as in weak, is that what soft is supposed to mean? And,
and soft means hard to quantify, right? You know, and it's more qualitative, right?
All right, I'll give you
quantitative logistics. Did we get them there? Yes, we did. But then there's shades of gray within that, and even within the logistics program, was it on time? Did all their stuff break? Were they happy with the professionalism? You know, did the guys smell that we're moving them? I mean, there's qualitative aspects of that, but then there's also like much bigger, you know, and you're saying this, I'm just repeating what you're saying basically, but you know, there's now that they're there, okay, now they're in Atlanta. Now what? You know, are they going to thrive or not? You know, and of course, just because their stuff arrived doesn't mean they're going to thrive.
No, and usually what makes that assignment go wrong happens 6, 8, 9 months after their stuff arrived.
That's right.
And the RMC usually, or the logistics provider or the legal provider, they don't witness that go wrong. It's usually the human resources department that gets to deal with the fallout, and there's more to that, right? So and sure, soft skill means it's hard to quantify, but my line is always, without your quote unquote soft skills, none of your hard skills will work. So you may have the best subject matter expertise, but if you're unable to relate to your new environment, if you're unable to lead, manage, inspire the people that you're now working with, then what are you going to do with all your awesome hard skills? They're not going to be applied properly.
Yeah, and I think, I talk about, you know, if your family is not, if your family's your foundation, and if they're not good and strong and flourishing, then it's impossible for you to be good, strong, and flourishing at work, because you're, you know, and in order to get them good, strong, and flourishing, and you talk about the family, you know, earlier, you have to prepare them for the culture shock and the assimilation and you know, I guess whatever other buzzwords you want to use, but they have to be ready to flourish in that environment. And I guess, and I have some questions coming in here, and I want to take these questions and answer these. And if you have questions for Christian, go ahead and leave them here. We're going to get to everybody. Let's take a couple. Let's take a couple here. Comments here. Oh gosh, people are leaving German in the comments. Come on, people. How am I supposed to read this? I'm an American. I don't speak. I can barely order an Italian restaurant. All right. Simon Johns. Oh yes, I'm from North Yorkshire. God's own county. So they're talking about the beef there between the North and the South in the UK. Alan King. Hi, Ben and Christian. Schoen Grub aus Deutschland.
Yeah, that's about right. Alan is he's got a relocation business, I believe, in the Cologne area in Germany. I think he's a Brit in Germany, if I'm not mistaken.
Why'd you got to do that to me? Thank you for being kind, Christian. Jamie Massler, much easier to go from the south to the north than from the north to the south. That's Jamie's experience. Simon Johns, okay, this is a question, and this is a fun question. I love fun questions. Simon's always good for a fun question. Simon Johns says, how do you get on with your European/German sense of humor in the U.S., specifically on the West Coast?
I'm not sure if I had a different experience on the West Coast, but in general, German humor or Central European humor can be a little bit, as I would say, around the corner. It's not a straightforward type of humor. It has a lot of sarcasm and double entendre in it. Yeah. And U.S. humor tends to be really in your face and hit you dead center. So sometimes my sarcasm or my attempt at sarcasm bombs, like it falls flat, like crickets, and like, dang, all right. I
remember when you and I were messaging about setting up this show. We were kind of doing like this and stuff, and I'm like, I couldn't really read you, and I think there might have been a cultural,
of course,
there. And but I mean, we figured,
well, and sometimes I do that to test people, right? So obviously, I'm aware of it, and especially if it's only written communication, if we're only texting each other, we don't have voice tonality and we don't have body language. So the two big important puzzle pieces of communication are missing if we're only using text word base, right? Great. But I've lived in this country for so long that I deliberately let my Germanness flare up and test how the audience is responding. Do they pick up on that or do they not? And that gives me a clear gauge where you say, okay, this is how far I can go. This is how I need to adjust my style here. Because either they're gonna laugh and roll around on the floor because I'm hilarious, or they think, gosh, what was this? I love it. I'm out to bust a myth, right? So there's this stereotype around Germans of being humorless and that they don't laugh and they're too serious. And Yeah, we have ways to make you laugh. I tell you that.
Or maybe it's just that we just don't get the joke, right? Because it's so around the corner, it's not on the nose as we like.
Yeah,
to say
humor
over
doesn't
here.
translate well over linguistic and cultural.
The other
borders.
thing I noticed is right out of the gate, you and I are talking on the show, and you bring up race,
Mhm.
which is a supercharged subject that most people would stay far away from, and you
Yeah.
and you front load it, and I love that actually.
Oh,
'Cause
I
love
address
talking
it head on all the time.
But you know what's funny is we had Tracy Oyakami on today, who's from Nigeria originally. Now she lives in British Columbia, and
Yeah, I watched the program this week. Yeah, she was awesome.
yeah, also a culture person, and she also was she put race forward, and she also talked about biases and prejudices, and you know, I mean, she was very transparent with it, I thought. And I find that so interesting that two people that are not from you know, originally from the United States have no problem talking about it openly, in a very measured and thought out way, and just kind of you know, anyway, just a very centrist kind of a way. But people in this country would never dream of bringing that. Most people, 99% of people, would never dream of bringing that up. I just find that fascinating. You're both culture people.
Well, obviously, with me, there's a purpose behind this, right? So if it's training that includes the United States, then this is a topic that I think would be negligent of me to not address, because if you're an incoming expatriate and you're not aware and understanding of the ethnic and racial misalignment in this country, then you will never fully understand how the U.S. work. And if we're doing work with U.S. populations, I also have to address how racism may play out in the foreign destination that they're going to, or how it might be different. Plus, this is going to get a little heavy here in a second, but I need to get this out. It is the conversation with quote unquote the other, and that of which we are afraid, is the underlying why of the work that I do. So I come from Germany. I was born 35 years after the end of World War II. That means my grandparents' generation were those Germans who committed the biggest crime against humanity on record.
Wow.
So I argue the reason why Nazi Germany allowed itself to go into the abyss, into the darkest place of the human soul, is because they were unable and unwilling to connect with those that are different from them. And it is my deeply held belief that if we understand cultures, if we understand each other better, then we don't have to fight each other. You can't hate what you love. You can't hate what you understand.
That's right.
So if my work contributes to cross-cultural understanding, to people resolving issues by talking with the other, then my life's mission is done. That's why I do the work I do.
I love it. I love what you said so much about understanding one another, and you can't hate what you love. You can't hate what you know. And I absolutely love that. And that is also why the show is called Love and Relo. It's because we need to understand how to love one another first before we even start talking about relocating, right? We need to first understand each other as human beings, understand each other's stories so that we have empathy and so that we can relate to one another. And I love the fact that you just said that. It warms my heart. It gives me so much hope that other people have the same vision that I have. And honestly, if you get nothing else out of this program right now, what Christian just said is the most important thing that's probably going to be said this entire hour, you know, is that we have to understand one another. And the reason that Germany found itself in that predicament 60, 70 years ago, 80 years ago now, was because they didn't know one another, and they didn't understand one another, and they didn't relate to one another. And I'm going to draw that. I'm going to bring it up full circle. Here we are in the United States. It's 2020. We're divided as we've been since the 60s, and we need to stop. We need to understand one another. We need to relate to one another. We need to realize that we're all mothers and fathers and brothers and sisters, and we're more alike than we're unalike. And 95% of what we want to do is just make a better life for our families. And when we understand that about each other, then the other 5% about how we get there, we can sort that out. and we can debate that all day long. But at the end of the day, we're just moms and dads, brothers and sisters, right? So let's just remember that when we're dealing with one another and treat each other with respect and empathy. Christian, thank you so much for saying that.
I'm with you on that. Fully agree. And to bring it back to the original question.
Thank you for saying that. And I think a lot of people are with us on that, but we need to say that enough times, right? That needs to be the message everybody hears.
And I'm not afraid to repeat that message. I had it this morning. I walked the dog in the morning at, I don't know, 7:30, and there's this guy across the street. I've never seen him before. There's his doobie in his hand, walking his dog. And mind you, I live in a very black neighborhood in Atlanta, right? Mm-hmm. So I've never seen this guy. We say hi across the street because spatial distancing and all, right? And I usually call it out. I haven't met you here. Where do you live? Well, across the street. Well, how long have you been here? Well, for 3 years. And yeah, sure, I'm the guy with this skin color and I live here. Okay. So I call this out. I make this a part of the conversation, and it has served me well because my counterparts are the people in my environment, the people that I meet on a day-to-day. They recognize that I'm not afraid to talk about this and that I acknowledge my privilege.
And yeah, we have to acknowledge it because it's obvious, and we have to laugh at ourselves. And that once we laugh at ourselves, it takes all the pressure out, right? I mean, that could be if you're having an argument with your spouse. It could be if you're having an argument with your neighbor. It could be if there's tension at work. Once we're able to laugh at ourselves, it just lets the air out of the balloon that we're all afraid to pop. And so I just I love that, the fact that you acknowledge it. I think we have to stop taking ourselves so seriously. And I think we'd find that we're all pretty cool and fun to hang out with. I'm going to go here to some comments because people have been really patient here. Victoria McCullough, hi Ben, TGIF. Hey Victoria, I hope you're doing well. I think today's your last day at work, so I hope you're doing well, and God bless you. We love you, thinking about you, Victoria. And if anybody needs a fantastic relocation consultant in Texas, holler at Victoria, okay? Now, you might know this person.
Yeah, I've seen that face before.
Brigitte Höferle. Hello, oh gosh, is there a vowel missing in this word, or am I crazy?
No, she's trying to be funny. I think this is.
Can you translate this?
Well, if I were to read this is, this German is very funny.
Thank you.
Thank you, honey. You're awesome.
You're something or else. That's right.
You see why I married her? See? I'm married up.
You know what? She would get along well with my wife because that's my wife's favorite topic of humor is me.
All right.
Victoria McCullough, Jamie Master, me too. Okay, we have a question here from Ed Cohen. Ed Cohen, you probably know, runs globalhrnews.com. Give Ed a talk show. Give him a plug for his talk show, globalradiotalkshow.com. Question about assessment. During the recent past, were you seeing companies devote time and energy to making sure the right people were picked for the assignment? Cheers, Ed.
Well, hi, Ed. Good to hear from you. Actually, was on the phone with him yesterday. I think there is. Well, I have to diversify the answer. It really depends on at what maturity level the employing organization is. If they're going global for the first time, or if they're sending people out for the first or second time, then probably they don't have a bandwidth for assessing the right candidate. They may not even have the bench to pick from the right candidate because, and a lot of my clients were that way. They said, well, we have 2 people for this job. One needs to stay home, and the other one is the one that we can send. So who's it going to be? Pick a straw. So there's not really an option for an assessment. However, the bigger the organization, the more developed they are in their global presence, they do assess their readiness, their global readiness, and there's a multitude of assessment tools out there to try to pick the right person. And
is this like a test, like a computer test, or is there's evaluation? What are we doing here?
There's a couple of tests out there. There's the global intercultural readiness test. There is, that's a plug to my friends in the Netherlands. There is the COSI group has developed a GDC global Global Competency Inventory, GCI. That's a 16-dimensional assessment. And then there's other cultural comparison tools. The one that we use is GlobeSmart Profile. We also work with Country Navigator, and we use a personality profiling tool called BANK, B-A-N-K. This is the acronym for the 4 personality prototypes. Not to compare it with DISC, but there's other personality profiles out there. So there's a multitude of assessments you could use depending on what you want to test your talent pool for, right? So the simple, quick answer would be the more developed an organization is, and the more spiderweb their global presence is, and their broader their talent benches, the more they'll be willing to accept or recognize the need for a readiness assessment. If they're a smaller entity, then that's probably not going to happen.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the challenges that we have as an industry is educating the smaller, more fragmented client base who just aren't as savvy and aren't as sophisticated as the larger companies that have more of a relocation, global mobility culture. And I think that that's something we have to put our arms around. But I think that shows like this and using media and more tentacles out there into the HR world, I think is really a solution to getting that message out there. And,
Yep.
and actually, really quick, why don't you go ahead and plug your podcast, which is also a way to get
it's called the Culture Guy podcast, and the Culture Guy is the nickname that I didn't pick that. It would be, I think, from my Germanist, that's a bit corny, but I was part of
like Love and Relo. Yeah, it's a little corny.
That's all right.
Got a lot cooler than Love and Relo.
No, I learned the American phrase, if the shoe fits, wear it. So somebody presented that shoe to me. So I was part of a global mastermind group, and I was introducing what I did. And there was one member of the group who said, "Oh, yeah, I heard you pitch before. You're the Culture Guy." And that stuck. And so I decided, okay, if that's what you want to call me, if that's how people perceive me, so be it. And that's been 8 years ago, and ever since then, the Culture Guy. That's the name of the podcast.
So where can people listen to your podcast?
You can listen to it on all the podcast aggregator sites, from iTunes to whatever. I don't know them all, Stitcher and Deezer and whatnot. Yeah. The best way would be to go to my website. That's, I think, the easiest way to find them. You go to theculturemastery.com, and there is a podcast navigation thingy, and you click on that, and you'll get all the episodes.
Guys, go check that thingy out.
The thingamajig.
There you go. Okay, we got some questions here. I got some other things I have to get to, and we are going to talk about soccer versus real football at the end of this. Okay, and I don't even know which side you're on, but I'm prepared to debate either side.
Okay? Good. Bring it
ready,
on. Okay? Bring it on.
So stay tuned for that, my American friends. Let's see here. Roy Ramirez, hello, everyone. John Fernandez. Hey, John, from Scottsdale. Awesome. Alan King says my pronunciation was correct. I appreciate the second opinion on that. Let's see here. Brian Rivers. Hey, Brian, First Tech Credit Union out in Sacramento. Good to see you, Brian. Let's see. Talking about German humor. Alan says that's true. They did not translate Sharknado in Germany, as far as I'm aware. You know what, Alan? That did not play here either. Okay, so I don't know.
Maybe Alan is among the 7 people who watched that.
Yeah, I watched enough to know that it was just as ridiculous or more as the title was. A tornado filled with sharks. I mean, there's so many movies that need to be made. Who got a budget for that? Let's see here. Hello, Christian. You are good. This is from Ed Cohen. And hello, Christian. You are good, very good in the interview, and you are a very good and decent person. Glad to know you.
Thank you.
Nice.
Hey, Ed called me a mensch. That's awesome. Appreciate it.
I love it. Yeah, a mensch, a good person, a doer of good deeds. Love it. Let's see. Simon John says, I actually LOL'd when you mentioned the war. That's around the corner humor for you. I was thinking, don't mention the war, and you did. Brilliant, well done, sir. And from a Brit, hats off, sir.
Well, this is my rule of thumb, because Americans ask me, or no matter what nationality, when they're sent to Germany, they say, "Can I bring up this topic, or how do I tiptoe around this issue?" I said, "Don't let a German introduce the topic, because chances are they will. And when they are ready to bring it up, they're ready to debate it until midnight, right? But don't bring it up. Let them bring it up.
So for us, it's the Civil War, post-Reconstruction, racism, Jim Crow is our skeleton in our closet, right? And we managed to talk about all three of those things here. So I think we're checking all the boxes. Let's see. Victoria McCullough says, very well said. If you don't know where you came from, you can't move forward. Love that. Ed Cohen says, reach out and touch someone's hand. Make this a better place if you can. Repeat. So I'm gonna touch you there, Christian. There we go.
Hi, Tim.
Let's see, Alan's got a question for you. Alan King, Managing Director of Expat Vehicle Solutions in Germany. Christian, how is the comparison with coaching the younger generation of expats, those that are 25 to 35 now, compared to, say, 5 to 10 years ago? Are there any cultural trends that have changed with the signees coming to America in general since you started TCM?
I wouldn't say 5 years is the time frame that I would use to compare, but I would agree that the current younger generations, the millennials and Zs that are being brought into expatriate roles, are much more prepared for a global assignment. They have an awareness of difference to expect, and they're much more dexterous and much more agile in adjusting than their.
What do you attribute that to, Christian?
I think that now looking at the current situation with COVID, so we're getting our knickers in a twist because we can't travel, and there's no spring break or no summer vacation, and we can't visit. I can't be a best man at my friend's wedding in San Diego right now, right? Well, boo-hoo. 30 years ago, did you fly in your best men from across the globe? No, you didn't. So I think the current younger generation has just benefited from technological advances that has exposed them to more cultural differences and more flexibility than their parent and grandparent generation. Just the fact that I live in this country, for my parents who were born in the 1940s, my parents still can't really wrap their head around that their grandchildren are growing up in Atlanta and that their son is running a successful business in America. This is so foreign and strange and so far out for them, and it is quote unquote normal for me. I'm a Gen Xer, so imagine what is normal for the Gen Zs and the millennials. So they are just better primed for international exposure, and they don't go into the difference blindsidedly. And millennials and Xers and boomers often were really hit by a ton of bricks as they entered the new environment. So I think that is probably the most pronounced difference that I've experienced in my work.
So this is all really great stuff, and LinkedIn is having some trouble loading some comments. So I'm seeing some more that are coming up here as well. Ed's asking, I think, about hand size, maybe size 11. I'm hearing John K, CEO at Quality Moving and Storage. Can you repeat the website, please? Repeat the website of your podcast, please.
Of course. Go to theculturemastery.com. So in the back there, where my finger's pointing there, that's the name of the company. One word, theculturemastery.com. And follow the navigation leading to the blog, to the podcast, to... Yep, there we go. Thank you. See, that was easy.
Let's see here. Rory Ramirez remarks Sharknado 5 is coming out.
Yeah, getting tickets now.
4. Oh my gosh. Let's see here. Jamie Massler is saying that is why millions are spent on diversity spend within large corporations to create diversity within these organizations.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, cool. Make sure I didn't miss any other questions, and then we can get to the epic question of football versus football. And I don't know
Fußball. Fußball, as we call it in German, or futebol, as they say in Brazil.
All right. So tell me go ahead. You lead here.
Well, I don't want to make it a what's better than the other. That's not the point here. I use
it's America. This is how we operate.
America. Fight it out. Well, if you want me to pick one, of course, my heart will always be soccer. right?
Okay.
FC Bayern München, and I know I'm alienating all the Cologne people on this. I don't care. Munich is the soccer team to beat. So there you go. But
I like how you pick soccer over football, but you will pick a Munich team over another team.
Of course, or the Atlanta team, which that's the city I live in, right? But Munich, hands down. So if you wake me up at 3 a.m. and say, "What's your team?" I said, Munich. I use football and soccer as an analogy to explain certain team leadership and management styles. So you have the soccer leadership style, which is a lot more autonomous decision making in a team of equals, and you have American football, which is much more hierarchical and much more structured with standard operating procedures, with very little to no autonomous decision making on the field. There is an
even have a speaker in the helmet telling you what the play is going to be.
Exactly. So that I use these two sports to explain how organizations will handle or may handle their work differently, despite the similarities, right? They're both called football. They both play on a green rectangular field with goalposts on opposing sides. There's 11 team members per team on the pitch. They are wearing the same colored shirts and pants as they walk on. So they carry a sphere-shaped or kick a sphere-shaped object over the field. So there's plenty of similarities, right? Yet there are significant differences in how those games are played, how they're coached, how they manifest themselves. So I use that extensively in group trainings for multinational teams. So that's why I like that comparison.
So first, I'm not going to leave this alone. I want everybody to vote right now. I want you to leave in the comments, do you prefer soccer or football, American football or foosball? Okay, no. There you go. You keep throwing a lot of words at me right now. You're overwhelming me. Okay, I'll be honest with you. This isn't language training. This is cultural training. This is next level stuff right here for you. Okay. I do love what I do love about soccer is the fact that, and I know you want to talk about this more figuratively, but I want to talk about it more literally. What I do love about soccer is the fluidity and the fact that the game never really stops. And right. I really respect that. And I think it does go to your point about leadership. The game doesn't need to stop because the people are empowered to make whatever decisions they want to make. And there's not all these change of lines and change of, it's almost like football. American football is almost like the way wars were fought in the 1700s, right? We get our line together and we face your line and we march up to one another and we aggress one another, right? And then we see who's still standing at the end, and then we get back up and we do it all over again, we boom, and whereas soccer is more kind of probably the way wars are fought today, where it's a lot more fluid, and there's
well, and if we're dialing it back from the belligerent nature, look at a business model like fast food franchises. There is a standard operating procedure for everything. The burger patty will stay on this side for that long, and that side for this long, and the fries will remain in the fat for that. And how many slices of pickles and tomatoes and onions go on the sandwich? Everything is predetermined. You don't deviate from the process. There is an SOP, and you follow that to the letter.
So fast food is American football.
Well, in a way, yeah. If you look at McDonald's, but I don't want to endorse the brand, but that would be one example that most people know, right? That is a work organization that's very much football. And then you have like a lean startup where you have a bunch of people floating around and doing this and that and helping each other out where needed, and they have to independently decide what's right in the moment. Given that scenario, you can't manage that like like an American football team. You have to manage that more like with a soccer approach. You all are here for a reason. We hired you because you're multi-talented, and then apply yourself as needed.
Right.
In any given
testing and iteration, and people wearing multiple hats, and
right.
You're on defense one moment, you're on offense another moment.
Right.
Whereas with football, you go into it with a game plan and you say, this is what we're going to try to do, and we're going to execute on this. And in fact, the first quarter's plays are probably pre-scripted. We got some people coming in here and offering us opinions here, and that's what we dabble in. Jamie Massler says, and who also played, I believe, college football. All it takes is for any person abroad to watch U.S. football's hardest hits videos, and it ends the question. I love it.
Well, I will counter that, my friend. I didn't hear your name, but I will counter that. Why don't you just watch rugby? That's where they don't wear the sissy gear. Okay, you want to up the ante? Let's go there.
We're all in on this. This is great. And there's some pretty massive hits in soccer as well, when people go for headers and things like that, again, without head protection. I do also believe if people did not wear head protection in American football, you may actually have less concussions as well, because you're not using your head as a weapon.
Oh, okay.
Alan King votes soccer. Of course you do. Bud Cole says football. Go Cowboys. How about them Cowboys? All right, I had to say that.
Yeah, sure. What about the Lions? Aren't you in Detroit?
I'm in Detroit, but I'm not from Detroit. So that is a common misconception by people
so what's your team then?
Who think they understand my culture, but do not. I was actually born in Dallas, and so my team is the Dallas Cowboys.
All right.
Cowboys fan.
Terrell Owens, good old Chattanooga boy. Okay.
T.O., yeah, there you go. So we're running short on time. And I want to say, and I think we, oh gosh, hold on. There's some Facebooks coming in. Oh, look at this. All right. Let me give us a couple shout outs here. Jason Rollins from Express Corporate Housing, digging the convo. Janet says, what type of mic does Christian, what kind of mic he use?
I'm using a Shure. Oh, what's the model name? Let me look it up. It says
it's a lovely little
Shure MV5. Very nice. It's pretty cool. Plus, it comes with a cord that not only plugs into my computer, I can also plug it to my phone for podcast recording. Awesome.
Fancy. I like that. Jason,
it was like $50 or something.
Love it. Jason, American football. Kim Crawford. Hey, Kim. So nice to see you. I love Kim. Kim's great. This is Kim's first episode, I think, chiming in. Jana has a serious question. I guess we have to take those now. Trying to make me a responsible journalistic outlet here. What is Ice Cube? I know what Ice T is. I know what Ice Cube is, but I do not know what Ice Cube is.
Both are awesome. All three are awesome. Ice T I met personally in the studio with MTV. Ice Cube I unfortunately didn't meet it, but it was a very good day. Ice Cube is the combination of IQ, CQ, and EQ. IQ is intelligence quotient. Everybody knows that. That's your subject matter expertise. That's your core. CQ is cultural intelligence, and EQ is emotional intelligence. And the combination of the three is the secret sauce for global success. If you don't have that, then you're up. Can I swear here? Is this where we drop? No, we don't.
Please swear.
We do? Okay, you're up Schitt's Creek without Ice Cube. So there we go.
Well, and shit is a common German surname, I believe.
It is not. No.
Oh, sorry.
But we use the word the for shit is scheiße, and we use that as an amplifier word for everything. So the weather is scheiße, the food is scheiße, the work is scheiße, everything's scheiße. So there's actually a book. This will be funny. The German correspondent for the British Times newspaper wrote a book about his time in Germany. It's called A Year in the Scheiße. Good read for those who want a good laugh out of the Germans.
I love it. I absolutely love it. And now is IQ, IQ has a number, right? If you have 100, your average, I think, whatever. Does CQ and EQ, do they have numbers?
No, they don't. And it's not about the numeric. It's about the combination of the three. If you only are an IQ person, you lack cultural intelligence or emotional intelligence, then you're going to be a robot. If you only have emotional intelligence but no subject matter knowledge, then you're a nice person that doesn't really add value to the company. And if you have cultural intelligence but have a hard time relating to others because your emotional intelligence is low, then yes, you know a lot about other cultures, but you lack the ability to empathize. Well, how much is that knowledge going to help you? So it's the combination of the three that matters, and that's why I like to use that term.
Well, here's why I ask, because here's why I ask. IQ, well, I think they say IQ really doesn't improve over time, or maybe it does. Maybe you've
You
heard
speak for yourself, my friend. I don't
know. But I guess if you can't measure it, how do you know if you can? How do you know if it's improved? And I'm assuming that EQ and CQ can be improved.
They can be improved by cultural intelligence, emotional intelligence is not just an emotional capability or your ability to improve your relatableness. I don't even know if that's a word, but before you can relate to others, you have to build a knowledge base of what the other is like. So you have to understand, how do other people process their feelings and thoughts? How do other people do things? What is their culture? And building on that knowledge, will you be able to gradually relate better to that? There's a book I would highly recommend. It's called Global Dexterity by my friend Andy Molinsky. He teaches at Brandeis, and he describes what he calls a zone of appropriateness. So we all have a zone of appropriate behaviors that is appropriate to us, and that zone can be expanded with practice. So cultural intelligence, emotional intelligence will allow you to extend that zone quite a bit.
Well, and here's where I go with it too, is like, if you can measure it, then you can also train and you can test and see how well you're improving. You might even be able to gamify it when it comes to training. You know, I think it's fun to gamify cultural, CQ. I think that'd be fun. I think it'd be fun to gamify EQ actually too. I mean, we have sensitivity training, right? I mean, that's almost kind of like EQ training. I mean, I think it'd be nice to be able to actually test people. And
let me put it this way: if you come to my trainings, if you've ever been in one of my trainings, you will know what kind of games we play that make people very uncomfortable at first.
This is the German side coming out again, I think.
No, I don't think it is. Well, perhaps I enjoy in their squirming. That is true, but the whole point is make them uncomfortable, to alert people of their blind spots, their behavioral and perceptive blind spots, and then we debrief it off. I take the pressure out of the room. I take the tension out, but first we gotta feel the tension before we can release it, and then debrief it.
Acknowledge the tension and then unpack it. I think blind spots are so huge, and I would love to actually have a much bigger episode or panel discussion on blind spots, because I think that so many exist, and we don't know about blind spots, but and unfortunately that's the root of the issue. Going through here, it looks like Chris Roberts is a soccer guy. Sandra Clary is a college football gal. Rory Ramirez, hockey. Go Blackhawks. Did not see that coming, Rory. Hosea Potley, football. Go Cowboys. Hey, Hosea. Go Cowboys with them Cowboys. Jamie Master, rugby players agree. Watch YouTube. So you're starting to convert Jamie. He's found a middle ground with you on rugby. Rory Ramirez, go Hawks. He's also are you go Hawks and get on the hockey? Or are you going to sympathize with the plight of the Atlanta basketball team? I don't know. Jamie Master, Steelers Nation. Hosea, really, Jamie? Yeah, see, it's starting to happen. It's going down. Marco Major, yep. Bud Cole, nice tribe into attaboys. Appreciate you. Rory Ramirez, Rory does comment, such language hurts his virgin ears. He can't take it anymore, which I think is a good place for us to end, having offended some Americans here. But I do want to say, Christian, this has been fantastic. I do want to ask you, before we go, is there anything that you want to leave with the folks that are watching today?
You can read it back there. That's what I leave my people with. If you don't get culture will eventually get you. It'll bite you in the behind. So you have a choice. You have a choice. And if you choose to not get it, tissues are on us. So
wonderful, Christian. Thank you so much. Thanks everybody that watched, that tuned in, that left a comment, that hit that like button. Before you go, hit the like button, hit the applause, hit the heart, do what you feel, but do something. And be really kind to one another this weekend, and be empathetic. Work on your IQ, your EQ, your CQ, and not in that order, ICE. But anyway, work on that kind of stuff, and really try to understand one another. Seek first to understand rather than to be understood and advance your own agenda. So let's do that. Let's take that into the weekend. Hug your kids, and I'll talk to you later. Thanks so much, everybody. Love and Relo.
Thank you, Ben.
Thank you, Christian.